What's up, everybody? Real with Omar. We're not going to talk about seasons. We're not going to talk about episodes. We're just going to talk about where we are. I'm with David right now. David has his own podcast. David has gone on my radar because he talks about certain things that I feel that I would like to start developing a conversation about and adding to the narrative of who I am in terms of self-development, self-awareness. He has a men's accountability group. He has the No Snooze Podcast. David, thanks for coming on the show.
Listen, man, I'm very grateful to be here, and I appreciate you reaching out. I could tell that you're a high character man, a man of action, and that's exactly who I like to align myself with. So I'm very grateful to be here, brother. Thank you.
No, thank you. Let's start where we start. Dave, you're from Westchester. We talked about a little about this. Italian American. You did a lot of things young, and I think that I have a saying, which I tell my kids all the time. My kids are all adults. Everybody knows this, but I call them my kids. Is that maturity is created through necessity, and you're a lot younger than me, and I believe that you have a lot of experience already in life, and I think a lot of it comes from the necessity, the version of the person you had to become at a certain time of your life. When you were young, you faced certain challenges with development of a relationship with family, and you feel that that's affected the way you see things now. And if you don't mind opening up about that and talking about that for a little bit so people can understand.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to start there. I believe everybody should step into their story and their experience. I don't want it to ever sound like, I share these things and these moments in my life to feel bad for me in any way.
Okay.
I come from a very loving, middle class. We thought we were middle class. Let's say that. Right. Dad did everything that he could to make us feel middle class. And it wasn't until later on in life that I realized, all right, we were below average for sure, but coming up,
you're lower spectrum,
right? But coming up in Mount Vernon, New York, it was pretty typical.
Okay,
and we had fun, man. I have a brother and sister who are 6 and 7 years younger than me. I was always outside. That's the one thing that I want to instill in my daughter now. I happen to be fortunate to live in a great lake community up in Mohegan Lake, and I really pride myself on making sure that my daughter is outside, because I think technology these days, it really hinders the growth and the experience. But fast forward a little bit, I didn't have the easiest upbringing, like you were saying. Parents were married, but my mom was addicted to drugs and alcohol for the first 28 years of my life, and that was definitely an experience that I wasn't really able to process fully until I was an adult, but I saw certain substances very early on, became familiar with certain substances very early on as well. There was some hostility in the house in terms of, arguing and screaming and yelling and this and that. But again, you kind of think that's the norm, right? Because I did go to friends' houses and I would see parents fighting and this and that. But again, we had a lot of really good times too as a family, and I want to be super clear about that. But I was forced to grow up very quickly, especially with my brother and sister. I would have to, shield and protect them from certain things. But from that environment, my biggest takeaway was being able to really read a room, right? I'd be walking home from school and I'd be thinking about like, okay, what type of energy is mom going to be on? Because my mom, she could be the happiest and the greatest, loving, most caring mom in the world when she's not on the substance. But then when she was on the substance, there were certain moments and certain times and certain behaviors that I would notice like, wow, that's not my mom. So I would very quickly have to adapt. And I learned that I can walk into a room and really change the environment, because my mom, at the end of the day, she's a mother. And there's no love like a mother's love. Right. So I had the ability to, even if she was, in a bad mood or on a substance, to walk in and kind of change the environment. And there's an analogy. You ever heard of the coffee bean analogy?
No.
Okay, so you have a carrot, egg, and a coffee bean, and you have boiling hot water. Okay? When you put the carrot in boiling hot water, what happens to the carrot?
It
becomes
hot,
soft,
expands.
And it becomes mush.
Okay.
Right? When you take an egg and you put it in boiling hot water, what happens to that egg?
Hard-boiled egg.
It gets hard, and then it's soft on the inside, but it changes because of the environment. The coffee bean is the only thing that you can actually put in boiling hot water, and that water will turn to coffee.
Okay, so it changes the environment.
So it changes the environment, right? And that's an analogy by John Gordon, and I forget his partner, and they wrote this book, but it's something that's how I grew up.
Okay.
You know, and it's one of the most valuable lessons in my life that fortunately I'm now able to go back to. Fast forward a little bit, the age of 15, it was more like 16. I kind of changed my story. It was either 15, 16, or 17.
Nobody's going to fact check you, brother. Nobody's going to fact check you.
Diagnosed with Crohn's disease, a chronic inflammatory bowel disease. You have 28 feet of intestines internally. And mine, we couldn't really figure out what was going on. But I was in high school, and I was always in decent shape. I was a good basketball player, but I was never obese, and I was never skinny, but I was just there.
You're somewhere in the middle.
I was just there, But in a span of 4 months, I lost 45 pounds, and I went all the way down to 153 pounds.
At what height?
At a 6'2".
Wow.
Yeah, okay. So I was like a string bean, and I was constantly made fun of, but it was weird because I was made fun of, but I was popular.
Right.
It was strange, but this is a time where baggy shirts and things were acceptable. So I would just put on 3 shirts and kind of rock out. Right. But on the basketball court, I'll give you 30. Right. I was a 1,000-point scorer in high school, so I stood out athletically. Right. But I was battling this, and they don't really know.
And did you know it?
We didn't know what it was.
Right. Okay.
So they had me on multiple.
You didn't get diagnosed.
Yeah. Okay. They had me on multiple. I was up to 18 pills of prednisone a day, trying to figure out what was going on. My face blew up, but my body was disintegrating. Okay. In the bathroom 16 times a day. Wow. And I say the number 16 because they gave me a log of a chart that I had to log how many times I was in the bathroom for a 3-week span. And on average, it was 16 times a day. Damn. I would carry toilet paper in my backpack, which is not a comfortable situation to be in high school. Right. Turns out I get diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and Crohn's, there's no real reason to it, but it's linked. There's a heavy link to stress at a young age. Right. So, I get the chills when I think about it, but I'm like, there was a lot of stress in my household growing up.
It was a physical manifestation of the stress, right?
And it's also hereditary. And a cousin of mine who's also young, he's 36, 37 years old. He has Crohn's disease, and he was diagnosed pretty early too. Right. So between the stress and the link hereditary, there's my answer. But that's what kind of forced my expertise, now I'll call it, in the health and wellness space. Okay. I didn't have a choice, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't have a choice to learn how to take care of my body, to learn how to process different foods and to log. And know what 17-year-old is creating a food journal and a food log. Oh, I ate potatoes today. I was in the bathroom 45 minutes later. Oh, I ate grilled chicken. I didn't have to go to the bathroom for 4 hours. So I was able to create an entire diet by myself. And that's what really sparked my interest in the health and wellness space. And that's why today, the first thing that I do in the morning, it's all about self-care and taking care of myself. I wake up, and first thing I do is I do put a prayer into my ear. I put Joel Osteen. It's the first 30 minutes of my day. Okay. Walk into the bathroom. I hydrate with lemon, sea salt, and it's 45 ounces of that. I take care of my daughter. I get her ready. Everything is packed the night before. This is a really good tip that I think changed my life. If you want to be really successful in the morning, your preparation has to start the night before. So all my clothes are picked out the night before. I sometimes even exaggerate, and I'll put it in the car. Just because every minute counts in the morning. Right. And, I'm a single dad now. I'm in a co-parenting relationship, so I don't ever like to say single dad, but I'm a single parent household. Right. That's better verbiage. And I prioritize these things, man. And it's something that I take great pride in being, I call it habitual excellence. Mm-hmm. And I think anybody can develop habitual excellence if they're intentional about it. And I know that if I start my day a certain way, I'm ready for whatever life throws at me.
Whatever comes.
Pair that with my experience growing up, and I'm a killer. And I say that humbly, but there's never a situation that I can't walk into and find my way out of. And I'm very fortunate for the way that I grew up. I'm very grateful for every opportunity that's come my way. And I wouldn't change a thing, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. So there's my little rant.
I mean, look, you said a lot of things, right? So let me unpack a few of them. Because I say a lot of these things, but I don't say them with context or narrative the way you just illustrated them. So I want to touch on them. Like, people say, "Oh, wow, you seem very confident. You seem this." Well, confidence comes from being prepared. Being prepared means from doing the reps or doing the work. So you're just giving an example of why on a Monday morning, you're not stressed out like most of America, right? The second thing you said was you faced adversity, right? I believe, and these are all my, I always say that because people are like, oh, you can't speak for other people. And you're right. I believe that adversity is actually an edge, right? Adversity, I posted this yesterday. I don't know if you watched it, but there is no strength, whatever that definition is, without a time or a certain period of struggle. You have to struggle. And I'm not out there preaching, saying, oh, you go struggle. No, you want to change your body? You got to change your diet. That's not easy. You're changing a behavior pattern, right? You're talking about habits. Habits are who you become, right? And having the ability to change your habit is one of the strongest things. Like, you want to change to become a better version of yourself? Well, who do you want to become? Well, I want to become this. All right, well, what would it take to become that? Well, I want to drop weight. Okay, cool. So this is what I have to eat. Get educated. This is what I have to eat. This is what I have to do. You'll log in shit at 14, 15 people. Most people at 50 can't do it. You have to watch your calorie intake, watch your protein intake, whatever, cardiovascular. Like, I don't want to get into the science of it because it's not what this was about. But this is really about understanding that, things that are within your control, if you control them, you can change everything. And I think that was a great example of that. You took what adversity you had when you were young, and you were talking about, I was able to read the room. It's emotional intelligence, right? They have these words now. Back when I was growing up, they didn't have these words. Like, they're like, oh, he's fucking smart, or he's clever, right? Like, no, it's emotional intelligence. I mean, like, you're navigating somebody, and you'll correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but somebody who almost had like a bipolar thing going on, right? So you had to walk in, you had to adjust quick, and let's just be clear, this is your mom, right? So it's not like you don't outrank this person. Right. This is supposed to be your, like, God is the name, mother's the name of God on the lips of all children. So you're here and you're like, yo, how do I navigate this, right? Like, I'm walking home from school, anxiety's going up because now I got to walk into my real life and deal with this. So all those things are huge, man. All those things are huge. And the fact that you're able to speak comfortably about them is a big testament to you. Can you tell me a little bit about the men's group that you formed and why you formed that? Because I think all that's super important. I think, I use a lot of words. So, like, a lot of guys consider themselves alpha males, right? They want the name, but the connotation sometimes, look, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Like, and I'm not saying that in an egotistical way. When you're the guardian, when you're the father, when you're the patriarch, when you're like you said you shield and protected. To wear those mantles is not light. It's not, and I use that word purposely. And people say, I want. I'm like, all right, well, you want to be CEO? No problem. Here you go. Do those things every day, no matter how you feel, no matter what's happening, no matter who died, every day. Oh, I can. I don't feel good today. That's not an excuse. Like that to me is a true, like a gaping hole in understanding of people that say they want something, but I'm like, all right, well, here it is. Do these 5 things continuously with no promise of success, because that's the other thing, right? Like, there's no guarantee. You gotta have faith. You gotta walk in faith over fear. I'm sorry, I go off on my tangent, but I just wanted to connect a lot of the things that you were saying, so people can understand it the way I see it, and maybe they can't put it together as quickly. And I want to just illustrate that because, one thing my wife told me recently, and she was like, people, they see a certain person, whether we're physically imposing. I'm 6'2", I'm 6'3", you're 6'2", I weigh 240, you weigh whatever, like, and they think you're these juggernauts. But at the end of the day, we also have feelings, right? So and that is the conversation today. And men in general, like, we're raised a certain way. You were raised Italian American, right? I was raised Puerto Rican. Like, a lot of guys just drank and just, whatever. It wasn't really a development of a relationship with their wife or their children. I paid the bills. Fuck out of here. Like, that was it. So here we are trying to change that narrative and explain it. And you've taken it to the next level where you've created a group about it. And now I give you the microphone back. I just wanted to lay it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. And I appreciate your breakdown and your ability to do that. Not everybody can hear things and then articulate it back in a way that obviously makes sense. And that's the beautiful thing about even podcasting in general, because I could say something and it might hit somebody completely different than if you say it. Right. And something that you say might hit somebody completely different, but we're saying the same thing. So I always appreciate going back and forth like that.
It's that old adage of who said it, right? It's like you have a young child. I have young adults, right? We talked about that.
Which, by the way, you look great.
Thank you.
I mean, phenomenal.
Thank you.
You know, I really mean that.
Stem cells.
I really mean that.
No, thank you. But like you're gonna go through a lot of shit that I might say you're like, that shit is crazy. But like, no, it happens. Yeah. Like, like my middle son, he went somewhere. He was on YouTube. For those that don't know, I do mortgages and real estate, right? Like, I've been doing it for like 20 years. I'm considered like a big deal. Not in my house, all right? So in my house, my son is going on YouTube to learn about credit. I'm like, what? I was like, that's what I do for a living, bro. Like, he was like, I know, Dad, but like, I'm like, no, but you're Dad, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be,
yes.
And you could be LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron James' kids, he's not their favorite basketball player.
Right.
He said that. So like, it just becomes that dynamic. So get ready, bro.
Yeah, no, listen.
I'm just giving you some clues ahead of time.
Ready. Yeah.
So your group, I'm sorry.
So, really what it came down to, and this men's group, I'm a co-founder in, with my partner, Sean Degnan. Mm-hmm. And, I can speak on myself. I mean, I know Sean well enough to obviously speak on his story, but Sean and I knew exactly what it was that we not only needed as men, but also things that we currently need today.
Okay.
I'm very transparent about, my addictive personality. And just like I shared, I have addiction in my family. It runs deep. Mm-hmm. It's not only my mom. I have other members of my family that have addictive personalities. I've been like this my entire life. I've had to strategically channel my energy into what I call positive addictions. And I want to be clear, I don't believe any addiction is a good addiction, right? Like I used to, if I missed the gym, I would have, I'd have a meltdown.
Yeah, withdrawals, right?
Whereas now, like I've come to a very healthy balance. Like if you miss the gym, bro, it's probably better off because, you work out a lot, it's okay. Right. But I've tried to really channel myself to really get to a place to where like, listen, life is going to happen around you anyway. But I'm going to channel my energy into the positive things that I need. And I believe that men need strong men around them, right? We were talking a little bit off air. I believe collaboration is extremely important. I think it's even more important than competition.
Can I just add to that?
Yes.
I believe collaboration done with true intent, it on the overall, it supersedes and amplifies each other. Mm-hmm. If done the right way. Mm-hmm. Competition, now if we're talking sports, of course,
all right, 100%.
It's weird how people can be like, yo, we're not on the same team, we're playing against each other, we're trying to rip each other's head off. After the bell whistles, you're like, we're boys, right? But you have to be an athlete or some sort of, in some sort of competitive atmosphere to understand that. Most people from the outside in, you're like, that's fucking crazy. Like, these guys are like trying to kill each other. Mm-hmm. Now they're hanging out. But it's just part of it. It's part of it, yeah.
So my group is called Action Cultivates Excellence.
Okay.
ACE is the acronym. All these other things that you talk about in life, and we like to preach on, motivation and inspiration and like resiliency and overcoming adversity and all these things are cool. Mm-hmm. Means jack shit if you don't take action in your life.
Correct.
So that's where the name Action Cultivates Excellence, right? Because if you could have all the knowledge in the world, if you don't apply it with intention behind it, you're not going to be anything. Right. And we have a little saying that we say amongst our peers: if you don't do shit, you can't be shit, right? Absolutely. And it's very simple. But what it was meant to do is, change the narrative on masculinity, right? Because people will look at you, people will look at me, at Sean, and my partners in business, and we're bigger guys, and you have that alpha about you. But what we believe and what we know to be true is that real strength lies in vulnerability. And we have a tagline where we bridge the gap between masculinity and vulnerability. We blend those two together to encourage and inspire men to become the best version of themselves, not only personally, but professionally as well. Most guys, this is me I'm talking about, not most guys, but I'm sure guys can relate.
No, listen, man, you have to be careful with that because people are like, oh, you said, man.
I liked to portray perfection for a long time.
Okay.
Whereas I just shared certain things on this podcast, my life is far from perfect. Mm-hmm. And I have, consistent things that are going in my life that really just, it's not, I'm not proud of them, but I'm okay now sharing this. So for the longest time, I was so disciplined and so consistent in the gym, right? And I was so focused on Dave Reggina and building myself up to become this powerhouse. And
Superhero.
growing this great beard, then, you know what I mean? If you're on YouTube, check it out. Shout out Just for Men, you know what I mean? So, you're portraying one thing, but meanwhile, internally, my relationships were jacked up.
Right.
And it wasn't until something clicked, and it was so I'm very open about,
And can you go into like a time frame?
Yeah, I'm very open about my journey with therapy. Specifically, the past 7-8 years I've been in therapy, and I had a really poor experience with therapy when I was 15 or 16 years old. I was with a family member of mine. The family member completely lied to a therapist, and I basically got looked in the face after I told the complete truth. And the therapist told me, "You're an angry young man. You need to show some respect to this family member. And just what you're saying really doesn't matter." And that was my experience, to then find out that this therapist and my family member, they were good friends and, running off and doing whatever they were doing.
And the relationship was polluted from outside, but you would not know that at that time.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
So that was my first experience. So I was like, go talk to somebody, kiss my ass.
Yeah, I tried that.
I'm not doing that, And it wasn't until my marriage fell apart. I got married when I was 24 years oold, and my marriage fell apart. And, I made some bad decisions along the way, specifically in my 20s. And, we checked into marriage counseling. Happened, and just to fast forward, I happened to fall in love with, like, talking to this person.
Okay.
Like
The counselor.
The counselor, yeah. Like, I really fell in love with, like, wait a minute, like, I can share this,
process.
And, like, she could be right here,
You're
but
not
I
gonna
can
judge
talk
me.
to you.
Right,
You're not judging me, and you're
Safe space,
even telling me some things that I'm doing right. Like, this is crazy.
Right.
So then I liked therapy so much, again, being, having the addictive personality. I'm like, I need my own therapist. Let me get my own
I
personal
gotta do
one.
this 4 times a week.
Right. So that's pretty much what I was
to the
doing.
gym.
That's pretty much what I was doing. So then I get my own therapist. Shout out to my guy, Mike. He's very influential in my life. And, if there's one man that can tell my story after I'm gone, it's this guy. Okay. He knows everything about me. And he's been extremely instrumental in my growth and my progress and my comfortability and what's a good word? My belief in therapy now. Okay. He completely shifted my perspective on it. And I've become so comfortable talking about it. So, I say all that to say that I've had a lot of experience in that world, to where I learned that, bro, you can look perfect all you want, but like, people are going to see through it. And that's unfortunately something that I learned later on in my life. But now it's something that I'm just such an advocate for, man. Like, your insecurities and your faults and your past mistakes and the lessons that you've learned along the way become the chapters for your story of your life, if you choose it. Right. Now, if you choose to channel that energy and minimize it, it's never going to come out. But if you choose the opposite and you choose to embrace it, and every lesson, every loss that I've encountered along the way, it's not a loss. It's a lesson turned to a blessing, and I truly believe that, because if you can learn from your mistakes and not make the same mistakes again, you're a changed man or you're a changed woman. Right. And you can do that. So I'm very fortunate that I've been able to change my life. And I changed my life, thank God, before starting this men's group, because, if you're doing it along the way, and again, I'm still very heavy into it, and I have to stay intentional about my own personal professional development every day, because I think the second that you stop being intentional about that stuff, you actually start to die. Yeah. Like, if you start to slide. If you're not growing, you're dying. And it's much easier to die than it is to grow. Right. You take a plant, and it's much easier to just leave that plant and let it go. And let it die. It might take some time, and it might go through seasons, and it might die. But that's most people, right? You're consistent, you're inconsistent. You're consistent, you're inconsistent. Whereas somebody who's a gardener, they're outside every day, and they're watering that plant, and they're doing certain things in the dirt and the soil, and they're throwing new soil on it, and like, they're nurturing that relationship. Right. So that word nurture is very important. You need to learn how to nurture the things in your life and your relationships. So it wasn't until I had that experience with therapy to where I was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm already doing all of the things in the gym personally for me. Now I need to apply this same stuff. The same way that I could do a bicep curl and I say that I'm going to do 10 reps and I do 11 and 12 because I'm fighting through that pain, is the same way that I need to show up for my daughter when I get impatient. I need to, instead of snapping, I need to stay in it for an extra 2 minutes. The same way that I would do it with a bicep curl. There's no difference. And for me, when I made that connection, my life changed instantly because I was like, it's the same shit. You know, and sometimes we overthink it. Like, so if you're in the gym and you're being consistent, you have the formula. You know, if
you
you're
have
in
the
business,
aptitude, you have the ability,
Right.
and you have the resources.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. It's about focusing yourself, and now we're talking about a little bit about self-awareness, like knowing that, like you had to. Nobody could have actually told you that. You had to discover it on your own.
Correct. And that was through years of therapy, you know, but that's okay. So, you know, Sean and I have become advocates for men in this space to where this thing has blossomed, man. And, you know, we really pride ourselves on, like I said, bridging that gap between masculinity and vulnerability. We had a 3-day retreat, which was our first event. And it was this was way bigger than any event that we could have planned. But there's something to be said about like manifesting things and taking things by the balls and just running with it. So we had an opportunity.
Kind of like this podcast.
Yeah, 100%. We had an opportunity that was presented to us with a 160-acre property out in New Paltz, New York. Right. So I told my video guy, take your camera out, man. Just take it out.
Let's go.
He takes it out. I look dead into that camera, and I'm like, this 3-day experience is going to change your life. We have keynote speakers coming to transform you, coming to talk to you. We're bringing in, like, all experts in these fields. I didn't even know what the hell we were saying.
Right.
And we laid out this whole plan of how this retreat was going to go. It not only went exactly that way because we were intentional about it, but the feedback that came back from it was alarming.
Okay.
So people saw it all over the internet, and we only took 20 guys.
Okay.
You know, but the impact was like felt around the internet because as we were going through it, you know, we were taking stories and posting it, and that word that you just said became the foundation, community. Right. What we were doing is we were taking men who were, you had 6'7" mental health therapists there. Okay. You had first responders there. You had doctors, lawyers, attorneys, dentists, blue collar workers, white collar workers,
the whole
tow
spectrum.
Truck company,
you had everybody.
like literally mortgages, everything that you could think of. So we were talking around this table, and between us, we had not only had like 50 businesses that were owned, but we had over 50 children, right? We were fathers, we were leaders, and we came together as men, and we were able to discuss all the vulnerable things. And we created these pillars, and we had 3 different pillars, which now have become the foundation of ACE. And it's ORT, which is outdoor resilience training, where we're going outside, we're cold plunging in a frozen lake, we're chopping down some trees, doing some savage stuff. Right. To prepare us for what was called VBDs, Vulnerability Breakthrough Developments. That's where Sean and I are stepping in front of this group. We're talking about the insecurities that we currently have, the adverse moments that we've been able to overcome, which started a conversation amongst everybody. You had grown men in this room crying that have never cried in their life and feeling safe and feeling just rejuvenated after this. And then we had what was called ELT, expert-led trainings. We had Joe Girardi come speak. He was a keynote for us. He sat down and had steak dinner with us. It was an incredible experience. Spoke a lot about his faith, his family, obviously his career as a champion. He's a 4-time World Series champion. So he's speaking on winning and connecting the dots between business and relationships, and it was an incredible thing. We did sound healing. We had men's optimal coach come in to speak about health. We had former VP of the UFC, Diamandi Alingos, come speak, and she's a woman. Okay. So she came and spoke to the men. We had Elevate Med Spa from Greenwich, Connecticut come in. Vincent Maselli, who's owned and operated, you know, the biggest nightclubs in New York City. So we created this environment that then when we finished that, we were kind of like, okay, we'll see you next year type thing. It was like, what's next? Right. So then from there, we created our monthly personal professional development dinners to stay connected to everybody. So we do that monthly. Sean also owns the Sale House in Tarrytown. Okay. I'll connect you guys. He's a great person to even have on this podcast as well.
Oh, and my brother-in-law just bought a house over there. So we can have dinner.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a big deal. Like, I just want to say something about that, right? Like, in my experiences, I don't feel, actually, let me say that again. I know for a fact, because this is what happened when I was on my come up, right? On my come up, and I'm not saying that I've gotten anywhere yet, but I am playing in different fields than I was when I first started. The people that were always way ahead of me were always willing to support, right? And with no agenda, right? Like you said, oh my boy, I'll go eat there. Well, I want to support. We want to keep it going. We want like whatever we can do to help. I'm gonna eat anyway. Why not go there with my crew and eat there?
Right.
Maybe they like it, and then and that's the way I kind of think organically. Unfortunately, in my business, in mortgages and real estate, and I say this to say that I wish it would change a little bit. Whereas everybody should think that way. Like I can't do every loan. I can't do it. Like I think this guy could do that.
Confidence though.
Yeah, well,
you're confident now.
Well, let me get to that. I believe that when you're on the come up and you have nothing, you don't have that mindset, right? Once you start accumulating things and you have a little bit of maybe money, whatever it is, confidence, money, whatever it is, whatever currency you're using to kind of help elevate yourself, then your perspective changes. Be like, yo, man, I want everybody to win, right? Like, but I was treated that way on my come up by people that were like way ahead of me, like acting like I don't want to go into my story, but so I was like, yo, man, like, all these people say, oh, like, don't ask this question, and you ask the question, and it's very fucking transparent. Hey, guy, this is what I would do. I can't do this. Maybe you should do this. And even on Jay's podcast, I had that conversation with him. Like, anytime he would be doing something, I'd be like, yo, man, try this for you, because I think that would work really well with you. And I know I broke off into a branch of conversation, but I want to illustrate it because I wish the world was more like that. You know what I'm saying? Just like organically, yo, man. I want to add. I want to value add, right? If you approach everything like that, your fucking life changes, right? And and what you're doing with your men's group is, I think, illustrating that, because like I said, most of the time when you're the patriarch, you're the guy, where you're the head of it, everybody looks to you for guidance, and sometimes you're like, you have those moments. You're like, am I doing the right thing? Was that correct? You know what I'm saying? Like, and going back to mistakes. They just refine you, bro. They just, like, think of yourself as this fucking mountain of clay, and then you just keep refining yourself, right? You're getting to be that David, whatever that is, right? And if you approach it that way, I think there'd be less anxiety in the world, and there'd be a lot more people happier. Because, yo, man, I fucked up. Like, I can tell you about all my fuck ups and be like, yo, man, that shit didn't work out too well. But you know what? We keep pushing. We keep pushing. But because most people get stuck. Like, they perpetuate as if that one thing is their whole life. Right. And it's not. Our life is just experiences, right? I'm sorry, man.
No, listen. This is your show.
You spark something on me, and I just kind of go with it because I really want to give it light. I really want people to understand, yo, this is really important, right? It's really important.
You mentioned anxiety, too, and I just want to be clear about this as well, because it could be a big misconception. It's okay not to be okay. Like, I still get very negative thoughts, regardless of how intentional I am. They pop up. There's a scientific fact out there that you have up to 60,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of your thoughts, conscious and subconscious, are negative thoughts. 80%.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Okay.
This is the brain.
Okay.
This is how the brain, and it has to do with something with stress is also a protection too. Right. Of the brain, right? So, like, there's a reason why if you were to just run into the street, your body would actually stop and look left and right. Like, you can't really just run across the street.
Almost like an autonomous function of defense.
Yes.
Right, I got you.
Or if, like, you feel something when you're driving in a car and you, like, happen to just see a car out of the right side, that's your brain swerving back. Like, yeah, you're physically doing it, but it's way quicker than you can actually physically do it. Right. So the brain operates out of safety. Okay. So you have 80% of your thoughts that are negative. And that's why when you know that statistic, you have to be so strategic about what you're consuming, what you're looking at on Instagram, what podcasts you're putting in your ear. Because if you're now taking that 80% that we all already have and you're just adding to that, what kind of life are you going to live? What kind of life are you going to live?
Absolutely.
So I just want to be clear that I still get anxious thoughts. I still get depressive thoughts, but I take intentional action against the thoughts. So anytime that something comes up negative in my head, I actually do the opposite. I don't want to work out, I work out. Oh, I want to go eat fast food? No, I'm going to go eat something healthy. I don't want to go to the gym? Okay, I'm actually going to take my shoes out and put them on. Because what you do is when you actually take the action against the thought, then that thought becomes a positive one because you've actually done something. Okay. You've started to take action against the thoughts. And that's the way to, when you're able to break that down, and you struggle with a thought that's negative, the only way to get through the thought is to say, you know what? Okay, I already know that you're this negative thought in my head, but I'm going to take a positive action against it and start doing something about it. And that's what too often in life we're not taught. Like, it's just like kind of, yes, it's okay to not be okay,
Yeah.
But you still have an obligation to yourself, to your friends, to your community, to your children, to your parents, to your last name, to do something great with your life. And you have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of us. It doesn't matter where you're from, what culture, what color, this, that. There's a lot of negative shit in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
But you have an opportunity to change that narrative. And when you become confident and you step into this space, your life could blossom.
Right.
It really could. And I just want to be clear about that, you know, although, yeah, I have an abundance of confidence,
mm-hmm.
I still go through my shit.
Yeah. Yeah. We all go through our shit, man. And I really feel like I say things all the time that people just relate strictly to work, because for most of my content is geared toward helping people try to develop themselves into whatever they want to be, whether it's successful at a job or their own job or whatever in life. But I'll say from personal experience that discipline has saved me multiple times. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I've had life events where like other people, and me included, let me just not exclude myself. I didn't want to get out of bed, but it's Monday and I do legs on Monday. And I'm also, hats off to my wife who's always been there next to me. But no, you get up. And you're 50% of the day, if that's all you got and you gave it all, that's actually 100%, which I've stole that from a friend of mine. And that's okay. Again, it's your story, right? But you have to be super fucking honest with yourself when it comes to that, because so many people will complain about what they have based on work they didn't do, right? They're like, oh, I didn't do that. How come you, bro, remember, like, I wake up at 4. I get home sometimes at 9. It doesn't matter. And I wake up at 4 again. It's not like, you know, it doesn't, because, nah, man, like, it's Tuesday. We do chest Tuesdays. So, like, you know, like, just to use that as an example, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, we're not robots. I understand that. But there has to be that hard line of who do I want to be? And this is my discipline, right? And going back to what you said, I personally owe it to everybody who has passed on. I owe it to everybody who can't. I had my hips replaced last year. I don't know if you know that, but I couldn't squat well for 10 years of my life. I had super arthritic, whatever. Anyway, but I kept squatting. I kept whatever version I could. And now I'm like grateful. I'm like, wow, I can move, like, you know, having super arthritis in your hips, like tying just to give you guys like context, tying your sneakers, you're holding your breath. And then you go down there and try to tie sneakers before the breath is out because it hurts so much. Like, and I lived with that for 10 years because I had other shit, going back to being the patriarch, I had other shit that took precedence over my own health, which is kind of fucked up to say that way. But it wasn't something that was killing me. It was just something that made my life really hard. But I was able to endure it for 10 years until I got this other shit off my plate. Mm-hmm. And then I finally looked at myself and said, all right, man, this is getting a little crazy. Let me fix it. And intentionally going to see a doctor, going to see an orthopedic surgeon, schedule my surgery. All this was done within 90 to 120 days. Like, people say, yo, that was fast. I was like, because I knew what I had to do, and I just did it. I didn't ask for an okay. I mean, I had scheduled my surgery before I even tell my wife. My wife's like, why are you crazy? I was like, this pain sucks. Mm-hmm. Like, getting up every day sucks. I fight through this every day. I was like, now that I have time and I've laid it out financially where I can take off the 3 or 4 months that I might need to kind of get back to kind of normal, I'm doing it. Because there's nothing worse than this pain, you know, like physically. Mm-hmm. And it just takes a special type of person sometimes. It takes a special type of person. But again, you have to look in the mirror, you know, and you can become that person. Mm-hmm. Just because you're not that person today doesn't mean you can't be that person. But you have to be very honest with yourself. When you look in the mirror and be like, yo, yeah, I say I want to do this shit, but then I go hang out. Mm-hmm. I say, like, you got to be honest, you know, like, and I think that's what's lacking. And I think that accountability group that you formed, if that's the name of it, or it's a men's group, sometimes even if you have super success or uber success in one part of your life, you're detracting a lot. Yeah. And believe it or not, eventually that pendulum swings and then the deficiencies become glaring. Like, damn. You know, like, my kids don't know me. Like, when I was younger, when I first started my business, my oldest son, I didn't see him as much as I wanted to because I was young, I was ambitious, I was aggressive, like, and, you know, that was super important. Now I'm spending a little more time. I'm coming back, and not that it's too late, because it's not, but rather, you know, I'm aware of it. I'm not, nobody told me that. I'm telling you that. I looked in the mirror and I was like, yo, man, I really want to have this type of relationship with him, right? And why don't I have that? And then I broke it down. I was like, well, I let that get in my way, or the fact that me and his mother weren't together. I don't want to say I allowed it, but it was there, and I wasn't strong enough at that point in my life to just get rid of that obstacle. I just kind of worked around it, or kind of went the easy route, right? And I'm just being very honest with you right now, like the way people have to be with themselves, and I think that conversation that you're starting with a group of men is important, because I don't think us men in general have enough of that. You know how many like DMs I get, like random people asking me random questions. I'm like, I don't have any context, bro. Like, you're asking me this question, I need to know more. And I'm not a therapist. I'm like, you can't ask me why your wife is leaving you. You can't I don't know anything. Like, I don't know. This would be like hours of conversation to kind of like really dig it through, like to really help. I can give you the can line, but I want to give you the real line. So that becomes the thing. And again, like I said, the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is because the work is super important. The work is super important. And you said you got a lot of feedback already. So what are people asking for now? What are they like? Yeah. They want another event? What is it?
Yeah, so they wanted to stay connected. Right. That was the biggest thing. And I think after you leave an experience like that, it was almost like college, to be honest. I was fortunate enough to be on a lot of good sports teams coming up. And, I went to Manhattanville College, basketball, the whole thing. And like, the camaraderie that you build on any sports team is a brotherhood, right?
Yeah.
So we left there, and it was like 2.5 days that you're there. It was almost like we were there for 4 years.
Right. We had no distractions. Right.
It was but everybody was there for the same reason. And also, let's be very clear, people were investing in themselves. People were paying thousands of dollars to be there. Right. This wasn't like hey, come, here's a free ticket. Like, this was a luxurious
just to add to that, when you pay attention.
100%. Well, that's what I'm saying. You're intentional about wanting to be there.
You're trying to get the value out.
So it was like, okay, we can send a recap on the event, and like, we can stay connected, but like, let's really stay connected here. So once we left there, we started to like log all of the business opportunities that were then coming, their way. For example, somebody was building a house, right? And they started a conversation of garage doors. Okay, well, Jonathan Cover happened to be there, and Jonathan Cover owns the biggest garage company in Westchester County in Whitaker Doors. Okay. So like, we started to log those things, and we were like, wait a minute. This brotherhood is also business, right? So like, we have to find a way to like continue to develop the skills to make sure that we can keep connecting people. So Sean owns the restaurant, like I was telling you, Sail House. So we do one monthly dinner for strictly men, but then the women wanted to get a little bit involved. So it was almost like, hey, why don't you do retreats for women? I'm like, I don't think you want to hear from me. Like,
you're like, I don't think I'm an expert in that field.
You know what I mean? Like, but sure, like, let's do the ORT, which is outdoor resilience training, and we can do this co-ed. So we also do that at the Sail House Tarrytown. And what we do is we do a cold plunge. So everybody gets in a cold plunge. My buddy Joe K, who connected, through Sean and Ace, he runs Ice and Iron. And he brings the cold plunges out, him and Nick Menente, two guys that run that. Then we get out, and then Sean and I lead them through a workout outdoors, and then we all have brunch together and break bread. Cool. So those are two ways that we've continued to obviously build this community. But women are so invested in this because they want their men. They see the impact of the men.
They see the difference in the men.
You know what I mean? And when you're able to make that slight connection between like, taking care of yourself in the gym, like I was giving that example before, and now you're able to apply that same thing in your relationship, why wouldn't your woman want that? Right. So now it's become so great that we have women involved. And also what we're working on, it hasn't come to fruition yet. We're still finding the necessary people. But one of the biggest players that made this happen is actually a female. Her name is Steph Madonia. She's the original person who reached out to Sean and I after we did a podcast and was like, hey, I have this 160-acre property. So Steph Madonia is going to be involved now in creating Ace Women.
So she hosted you.
Yeah. Ace Women, really. Okay. But she was also instrumental because she went through a divorce herself. And she's like, wow, like men need this. Men really need this. So women got involved. And it's just something that now has become so fulfilling to Sean and I. And I believe that, like, when you're passionate about something and it also is a purpose of yours, people always talk about their why and this and that, and that's great. But like, I didn't plan for this to be my why. I
Right.
just started to do things that I was passionate about. And I think you can develop your why. And I think that's a big misconception about what we hear in the personal and professional development space. It's always like you have to have a bigger picture.
Yeah, you have to have your North Star ready.
Which
right.
You don't.
Mhm.
Just do the things that you enjoy doing,
Right.
and you will eventually find purpose and passion behind it. And together that creates fulfillment. And then you'll be very fortunate when you're like, oh, this is
I love this shit.
This is
Yeah.
my real why.
Yeah.
But when you're sitting there trying to find, oh, my why, my this, my that, like, yeah, my daughter is a great reason for me to get up and get after it every day. But I can't just rely on my daughter to provide me happiness. Like,
Right.
I have to provide the happiness.
I have to be happy.
You know, like
Yeah, absolutely.
kids are great. And, it's the most fulfilling feeling in the world to be a parent, a father, a mother, I'm sure. But you can't just have your kids as the why.
No.
She's
let
a-
me
yeah, go ahead.
add to something to you. You said that, you do things that you like. And I want to add to this, to the younger guys out there. And you're one of them, compared to me. Yo, man, do a lot of shit that you don't like. Why? Because you check it off. Like, it becomes most of life is a process of elimination. And I'm just giving you guys a secret of life. I was a waiter. I was a busboy. I didn't like it. But I did it 3 years. Quick money. I was 15, 16, 17. I had this conversation yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind.
Yep.
I ran a gym. It was cool. Not for me. I was a doorman. Real cool. Not for me. I've done a lot of things. I was a cab driver. I was a liquor store owner. I was a nightclub owner. I was all these manifestations of me. It doesn't make me less authentic. But I can tell you at that point in my life why it was necessary and why it wouldn't work for me now, right? And that just gives me more confidence because
Right.
I'm prepared. Why?
Yep.
Because I've taken L's. I've beaten myself up. I've grinded my body out where I worked 7 a.m. to midnight for like 9 weeks. Like I was young, it was easy, but thinking about that, I'm like, yo, man, you only made this amount of money. And one of the things why I became an entrepreneur was like, yo, I only made this amount of money. I was killing myself. I was like, I don't like the limit.
Yep.
And I don't like the exchange of hourly of my time for money. I didn't work for me. It worked for other people. It just didn't work for me. And that's my process of elimination, right? So like it goes back to like you're going with your why and the positives, but I also want to illustrate the negatives. And negatives don't have to be negative. Negatives have to be necessary sometimes, right? Almost like you're saying your L's, right? You got to take a loss. Why? You can't savor a win. How are you going to savor a win if you've never taken an L?
Yep.
How do you love your child? I want to say, and never lost somebody. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they both coexist, right? And it just becomes the ability to, like I was telling you about my personal thing of accepting and processing. But you have to accept them for what they are, right? These things, grief to me is the ultimate expression of love. Like, it's just, my body hasn't accepted that this person is gone and I love them so much, it hurts. And that's all it is. And once you kind of like, again, I always use this analogy. Look in the mirror and you're like, yo, what is that? And nobody else can tell you. You have to, like, because nobody else really knows what's going on in here, man. Like you said, 80% negative thoughts. I never even thought of that. So I'm like,
crazy,
wow,
right?
that's crazy. But to have the ability to decode yourself, right? I think that's what we're kind of talking about right now. I mean, most people, okay, I can speak for myself. Like I tell you, like, a lot of people don't have the self-awareness to understand that. And I want to say I've done a lot of things in my youth that I look back at as like, wow, it was resilience, but that was coping. That was coping. You're going through something and you're like, nah, I don't even want to deal with this shit right now. Let me just focus on this. And I'll add, you said going to the gym. And I think I've looked my best physically in life. My father died when I was 18. I look great because I was able to use the gym as almost like a diversion. And this year, I'm gonna look great. I just lost my mother because it's a way of coping for me because you have to pour your energy into something, right? And going back to an addiction, you're addicted to love. There's different things of addiction. So again, being self-aware about it becomes the ultimate tool, right? And I think that's really what I want to talk about with you also because most people just walk through it almost like blindly, right? And you're giving context to it. You're actually developing a community around it, which is beautiful. Women have always, my personal opinion, have always been a little more in tune emotionally. I think we as men are geared or almost raised to work logically, right? Going back to how we were raised, we talked about this off camera. It was all about, this is what you do. you don't care about any of this. Like, don't develop any of this. We don't care about that. This is what you do. This is what you do. And going back to what you said, I've been married for 22 years now. No, I've been with my wife 22 years. We've been married about 12. But there was a certain part of my life where I was the shitty husband. I can say that honestly. And I'm not saying I'm a great husband, but I'm aware and I'm always trying. And hopefully that gives me some sort of credit. But you have to look in the mirror, man. You can't just say, yo, man, like, nah, you have a successful divorce, right? It took some accountability on both sides. Like, all right, this ain't working for us, but we have this little human. So we got to kind of like be civilized, right?
Yeah.
That takes strength.
Yeah.
That takes strength.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, talk about that. How did you navigate that? Did you have like
the separation?
Yeah, the separation. Look, I'll give you an example. Marriage was never on my mind until my wife put it on my radar because I had never seen a successful manifestation of marriage growing up.
Right.
So like you don't think those things are important because you don't see them. Like seeing the shit on TV was shit you saw on TV. That's not real life. That's how I grew up. Right. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so it was like fucking war zone. You know?
Yeah. No, happy to dive into that. Yeah, so my ex and I, we got together very young, you know, and it was a beautiful thing. It was beautiful love. It was really a good time. But we were 19 years old when we first moved into with one another, married at the age of 24. So the way that I grew up, you know, like I shared, it kind of turned me into somebody that wanted to portray like aggression. And it's odd because now I'm the complete opposite, which I'm fortunate about, but I found aggression to be the one form of expression that people would get away from me. And I didn't have to discuss things. So my, Dave Reggina's way of coping with things was to like, oh, let me turn up on you. Let me say some things that are going to push your buttons. Right. Now you're going to go away. Because this was my norm. Like, we would say bad things in the household, not my ex-wife and I, in my household growing up.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, we would wake up,
like nothing
wash
happened.
our hands and be like, I love you. Are you my friend? That's what we did. So that was my norm.
That's not just you, brother.
No, I get it.
You're talking about a whole generation of people.
100%.
Yeah.
But so I did that in my relationship. So anytime there was an inkling of any disagreement, I'm like, oh, now's my opportunity. Let me turn up. Let me, boom. Right. So what I did was I kept pushing this woman into a corner, kept pushing her into a corner. Not physically, but, you know.
I get it.
It was abusive, verbally, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah.
So I did that for a long time, man. I did that for a really long time. And it wasn't until the whole therapy situation happened, obviously in my 20s, made a lot of bad decisions, man. Like, caught myself seeking attention from other women, and that led me down a really bad path. I've always been fortunate to have a good career. So I was working for Westchester County and didn't have real money by any means. I still don't have real money for what I think real money is,
yeah.
So I want to be clear about that.
That definition is fluid.
Yeah. But for someone in their 20s, I had plenty to, you want to go to Miami this weekend? Go ahead, no problem.
Yeah.
So I caught myself leaning into that lifestyle. And what that did, it just started separating. My current relationship now, and it's ironic, she gave me this analogy that I just love, and I can't unsee it. But she talks about toothpaste and how a relationship is like toothpaste in a tube. And every time that you say something degrading or you get in a disagreement that does not get fixed, it's like a little bit of toothpaste comes out of that tube. Do you know how hard it is to put toothpaste back in a tube? Have you ever done
Impossible.
it? Right?
Yeah.
So the goal in a relationship is never to have the toothpaste run out of the tube. So that's the goal in my current relationship.
Right.
Unfortunately, for my past relationship, I went through that tube of toothpaste 58 times.
Quickly, right.
50, 60, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was all I was doing. And I remember when she said it to me, she's like, is that really mind-blowing to you? I'm like, yes. It really is, because that's exactly what I did. I would say wild things. And to somebody, men, for whatever reason, I don't know. And I don't know if this is just men or just me. But I don't really have an attachment to words. I do now because I'm mindful of it. I'm intentional about it. But women, the women that I've dealt with in my life, they don't have that same thought process. Say what you mean and mean what you say. So like I was doing the opposite, and I was saying things to degrade, because I just wanted to like get away, and I knew that if I could get you mad enough, you're gonna go leave me alone. But then I'm gonna come back to you and be like, I'm so sorry. Do you love me?
Friends? Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Going back to, I'm just quoting you. I'm just quoting you.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. So we just grew apart, man, and we had a lot of differences in just our style of life, and then I became obsessed with personal and professional development, whereas she didn't exactly need the personal and professional development the way that I needed.
Right.
So it wasn't exactly a priority.
You were on a pursuit of, you knew you had a deficiency. I'm just using that word, right? So like, yo, I got to fix this shit. Going back to addictive personalities, right? Yo, I got to fix this shit. So this is the way, fuck it, I'm all in.
Yes.
And again, going back to, I'm gonna give you a little bit. Going back to your first relationship, that's kind of a big swing for somebody to adjust to, right?
Yeah. Oh,
it becomes that, right?
Well, then I had trouble at the beginning of the separation, because I'm like, don't you see who I am now? Like, this is the man
today
you always wanted.
Right.
Like, this is him.
Right.
Like, and even family members were telling her and this and that, and like her own mom is saying like, look, this is what you wanted.
Yeah.
And to her, and I understand it now, she's like, I can't unsee the 60 tubes of toothpaste that have already, been empty.
I'll say it a little different. I'll say the wounds are gone, but the scars remain.
Correct.
Right.
You
gotta be fair.
And again, I hope I'm not making it seem like I was the worst man in the world, because that I have a lot of love to me, but I'm also my toughest critic, right? And I also can look myself in the mirror and be like, damn, Dave, like, you did make a lot of mistakes along the way. And I'm very grateful to my ex, because she had the capacity and the emotional intelligence to walk away because she knew that it was better.
Right.
And she wishes me so well, and I wish her the best. And we have a great relationship. And I think it's a little unfortunate these days that when people get separated or divorced, they always play the blame game. I'm at fault, right? Like, yeah, she could have made some bad decisions along the way, but like, I created this.
You're owning your shit, Dave.
I need to take accountability for that. You know what I mean? And it's not, and I think that's why I'm able to have the relationship that I have with her, because I truly know that. And I believe that. Like, yeah, did she do some things along the way that definitely weren't right? Of course. But like, why did she do that? And I think men in general, we need to look at ourselves, look yourself in the eye, and look at the man that you are and the things that you've caused. Because I will say that relationships, and this is not sexist by any means, but I do think that men are leaders, and men have the opportunity to dominate the relationship the way that they see fit. Right? And I mean that with energy. Like, our energy is dominant. There's a reason why in the jungle, the male lion is the guy, right? We are the male lions of our relationship. And I think women, when it comes to energy, they are a reflection of the man that they are with.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
If you see a woman that's walking around with her head down and she's kind of like beaten up, it's probably a reflection of the relationships that she's been in. Now, if you see a woman that's
confident,
bad, and walking around, it's probably because she had a loving father growing up. She's in a very healthy relationship, and she's, can people fake it? Of course. But for the most part, if you really look at these things and look at the people in your life, you'll be like, oh, damn, like, the baddest chicks in your life that you see, they're probably in healthy relationships, because the man is focused on building the woman up, right? Like, and I'm very fortunate now to be in the relationship that I'm in, because I have the most confident female. Okay. And she's absolutely beautiful in every sense of the word, and she's emotionally intelligent, and we're aligned in all of the pillars of our lives. But I that's what I want for my daughter, So I'm so strategic and so intentional about like making sure that I'm building, the women up in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the biggest thing is going to be building your daughter's self-esteem, right? Yeah. That's the biggest thing. So we talk about relationships. I don't even know how we got to this should be labeled like couples therapy, right? You know what I'm saying? Like what we think about. Now, let me ask you this, because this is something that I encounter a lot with people in general, and you can probably apply this to yourself and in terms of where you're at with development. Sometimes your ex-wife can't see you for who you are now, or couldn't see you at that moment. That being said, I consider myself almost like an anomaly, right? An anomaly in my family, an anomaly in my circle of friends, an anomaly in a lot of ways, because they couldn't see the world the way I saw it. right? And sometimes those are the crazy people, right? They change the world, right? So
Mhm.
I'll accept that brand. I'm a little crazy, only because I believe, I dare. Um, how have you encountered, especially within your group, where people felt a certain type of resentment for others' self-limiting self-beliefs and imposing them on them? And maybe I could have been this much farther ahead if somebody would have given me the, little push instead of the pull. Do you see a lot of that now? Like, I get a lot of DMs and stuff like that about people asking me, "Hey man, what do you think? What do you think?" And going back to what I said before, if I don't have full context, it's hard, right? Like, I can't give you, but I can give you the short version. And sometimes my short version might seem harsh. And they're like, "Hey man, my friends don't think I'm like, get new friends." Oh, my family. I was like, well, you can love your parents, but you don't have to, you can move out. You can it sounds very cold when I say it, but I'm only saying these things because I've done these things and they're hard. But I knew I wouldn't be able to do what I want to do unless I had to change my energy. Let's say that, right? Like I was in a 2-family and I had family in there, and it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for what I was trying to raise, how I was trying to create my own family, right? My boys and my wife. And then I had traditions that were in another apartment, and they were trying to like superimpose, and I'm like, nah. So finally I just broke out. I was like, "Oh, you can have everything. I'll start again, no problem." And it's hard. A lot of people, they feel like they almost need permission to grow. Does that statement make sense to you?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I think people have to. I pride myself on being very clear with my communication and also concise too.
And that was developed.
Yes.
Okay.
I happen to hold a position of leadership. Professionally, I'm a deputy commissioner in Westchester County, and I've been there for the past decade.
Okay.
And I've been very fortunate to be around great commissioners since I was 16 years old.
Right. So you're exposed.
In terms of leadership, I was definitely exposed.
Right.
But I always had a huge circle of friends. Always huge, huge, huge. But I quickly realized that I needed to compartmentalize my friend group.
Right.
I had the people who I would go out drinking with. I had my lifelong friends who they're just there by association. You know what I mean? Like
they happen to live next to me.
They just know, and there are certain people in your life. Like if you make it, they're making it. Like it is what it is because they put a lot of reps in with you, and they're coming regardless.
Right.
But I've gotten to the point that now, and to go back to the clear and concise communication, I'm very honest with my friends about where I'm trying to go. And ironically, a lot of them have taken a step back from me because I'm not going to speak on their own insecurities because I don't know them to be true, but they just don't align with what it is that I'm trying to do. They might be like my ex-wife who just don't need it the way that I need it, right? So I think there's always a time and a place for people in your life, but I do think that you have to be extremely intentional about the people that you keep and surround you daily. Right. My friend group has gotten much smaller. I would have never thought that it would actually be this small. Yeah. I have a lot of great friends that will be, again, lifelong friends, but the people that I interact with on every day have become, my foundation. And I lean on my friends because community is something that is so important to me. And I look at my friends the same way that I look at my family. And I see the impact that friends have on one another. And I know when I ended up in the clubs, it was, again, my choice, but I was with the people that love doing that. Whereas now I'm very strategic about are you looking to grow? Are you looking to win? Because if not, I'll see you.
We don't have that much in common.
I'll see you and
right?
I'll see you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're looking to build and you're looking to prepare for life's adverse moments, and you're looking to look yourself in the mirror and say, yo, you know what? I was here and I want to go there. Now you're in the circle.
You're in the right place. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that place changes.
Yeah,
that's a moving target.
100%.
Yeah.
But my business partners, I'm very strategic with business. Sean has become, one of my best friends, and I've known him for a year.
Okay.
But it's unbelievable. And I happen to go to school with his sister for 15 years ago.
Wow.
Back in college. So it's a very small world in that sense. But Sean and I only know each other for a year, and that man knows everything about me.
Because you guys have really deeply aligned interests, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two of my best friends, Ozzy and Mark Carter, these guys have been in my life, even when I was partiers. But those two specifically have changed their own lives drastically. And they're on their own journey of self-development, personal and professionally. But they also came to the summit that I held.
Okay.
So, your real friends will support what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And not ask for, can I have a discount? Can I do this? Can I do that? Obviously, there's a time and a place for that where, you can break your friends off with whatever comes your way. But, like, as you're all trying to build, you need to be conscious and supportive of one another.
And try to add value. That's my word. My word is value, because it's like, all right, we'll use this one. Go to the gym. I go to the gym. You go to the gym. I have a gym in my house. Whatever. My wife works out. Like, when I focus, you'll see. You'll be like, oh shit, Omar. Like, you were like, at a COVID, I was at 290. Not muscle. I would just say that. Had all the COVID fluff. Right now I'm 238, 236, whatever. Goal 228. Let's say 13, 12, 10, 11 body fat, and the rest muscle, and that's kind of my roughage. And I have my eating patterns, I have my workout pattern, I have all that. But we have the people that go to the gym sometimes, and you're waiting to use a machine. I'm just using this because this happens all the time. Yep. And they're like, they're texting. Yeah. I'm like, my man, look, you can put the phone down, just do what you got to do, and get out the way. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But they'll go to the gym for 2 years, and you'll be like, you do go to the gym? Right. But that's the greatest analogy for life. Like, you can do it and be intent and be intentful and have a strategy and actually fucking dive and commit. Or you can do it just to say you're doing it. Just to, I go to the gym. But bro, your blood work looks like shit. You eat like shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the difference between, I said this the other day, there's the guys that are doing shit and the guys watching do shit, criticizing, but I don't have time to talk. I'm busy doing shit. Like, so it's very simple. It's very simple. Just do shit. And going back to tying that into your statement, is like, your friends that your friends, you doing that? That sounds kind of cool. I'm gonna add value. I'm gonna be there. Why? Because you don't know everything. And I know people for long periods of my time of life who we've never had real deep dives because we've never really had that time, right? Like, you know what I'm talking about, when you have that time separated, we're just gonna talk, right? Like, right now, today, we'll probably know more about each other in an hour and a half than most people know in 20 years.
Yes.
Why? But that's on purpose. That's on purpose. I do that to the camera all the time. That's on purpose. Like, it's not by mistake, right? So more people have to just do that. Like, if your friends are your friends, they're supposed to support you. It's not like, you think like, if you got it, you don't. If you don't got it, but you want to be there, we'll figure it out, right? We'll figure out a way. That should be the conversation. But most people, not really. I'll say people that are not trying to build anything or haven't reached any type of level of success always kind of seem like you're trying to exclude them when you're just on your journey. Bro, we're just on our journey. Like, I'm a traveler, right? We're travelers. We're traveling wherever we're going, I don't know. But if you're traveling in the kind of same direction, then we're really going to have a lot more to talk about.
Right.
If you're traveling somewhere else, that's cool. It's not personal. But I can't diminish me to make you comfortable. And that becomes the uncomfortable conversation you have to have with certain people that may have been your friend early and you just don't have much in common anymore. And it's not an attack. It's not an attack. It's just like, this is where I want to go, this is where I want to be. Hopefully you join, or maybe it just doesn't align with you. That's all cool. And that's cool too. Like, we don't have to be mad about it. But that's where I see a lot of friction start to come. Yeah. And again, going back to accountability, they're not looking in the mirror like, if he's trying to go, like, if he's trying to lose weight right now and do his thing, don't invite him to the bar to have wings. Like, respect that, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, find a happy medium. Watch it on your 84-inch screen TV at home. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it should be more aware of each other's goals and then stop trying to superimpose. I think a lot of life is a lot of give and take where people are trying to superimpose their will on others. And there is a medium if you can see the big picture, right? I think a lot of people don't see the big picture. I think they're just so stuck in their picture that they're like, nah, fuck that. Nah. And there's a time and place for that. Like, if you're trying to do great things, you're gonna have to be like, sometimes, man, look, this is not a negotiable, right? This is what I'm doing. Sorry. Like, we're not gonna talk for 6 weeks, whatever. if you have incredible intense effort, you get incredible intense results, right? And I can tie this shit right back because I go to Lifetime in Harrison, and sometimes like, what the fuck, bro? Like I'm just trying to use the hard machines are never full. Now, I'll put it that way. The hack swap never align. Fucking leg extension machine. Like I can't do this at home. I want to use this here, and there's like 18 different people. You're like, come on, bro. I'm sorry, that was a little bad.
I got you.
But you get it. You get what I'm saying, right? And what do you see in that? What do you like? Do people come to you and be like, yo, I want to change this, and you're like, well, just change that, and they're like, oh, I never saw it that way.
I don't understand your question.
Sometimes people come to you for your advice. Like for me.
Yep.
You'll be like, yo, I really want to, all right, I'll use this example. I want to do what you do. I'm like, okay, all right. So for 20 years.
right. So for 20 years,
so for 20 years, wake up at 4 a.m., do this, do that, work on value add, learn guidelines, do this, work on development of trying to work with others with not an immediate return on investment ROI, because some relationships are not easily metriced. Like it's not a sale. It's a brand or marketing, or rather it's a relationship-based business, and you have to develop that. All in the while, then you'll also have your sales techniques where you'll have direct marketing or direct sales where you need to make money because you have to make a living. Do that for 20 years, buddy.
right, I got you.
There you go. They're like,
they
gotta be easier way. Like, well, if you want this is what I did. This is how I did it. Here's a blueprint. Go have at it. There's no what's the shortcut? There is no shortcut. Not to greatness. And I'm not saying that to be arrogant, but to have a certain amount of credibility in your field, you got to build it. You got to build it. There's no shortcut building a building. Oh, can we do no foundation? Yeah, and it'll crumble. Right? Same concept.
No, I understand now. I always speak on habits. Okay. You know, when anybody asks me for advice, the first thing I tell them is like, listen, I'm not here to teach, but I can share my experience along the way. I think what you're saying is spot on, that you can't achieve a level of greatness overnight, but you can begin to implement excellent habits into your life overnight. And if you can pick out 2 or 3 things that you can begin to do tomorrow, right? And on a Thursday, I love how society is like, I'm going to start on Monday. The first thing that I always say, if somebody's asking me for advice, is start tomorrow. Because what tomorrow is going to do is just add a little bit more intensity to it. Because you're only going to be able to you can't process Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You don't get to do that. You get to process from Thursday afternoon to now you're making this change Friday morning. You
know the Parkinson's law, right? You know
yeah.
So it's the time domain.
100%.
If you say 5 days, it'll take 5 days. If you say 5 minutes, holy shit, you did in 5 minutes.
100%.
Right.
And I think the biggest misconception that I thought I guess the thing that I thought to be true was that like I had to do these like crazy things for a long period of time. It's really simple things over a long period of time that will achieve your greatness, right? So like, you know, you being able to get up every single morning for 30 days and make your bed, drink 45 ounces of water in the morning, pack your lunch, pick out your clothes, do that for 30 days and watch the progress that you have in your life. That right there is going to just give you a little taste of what it is that you can do in the long run. And that's just habit stacking, right? And you hear it all the time. But what habit stacking does is builds confidence. People think, and I ask this question all the time on my podcast, do you think that confidence is something that could be built, or is it something that you're born with? And I hear a mix of 50-50 all the time, depending on who I'm talking to. And I don't think there's a right or wrong. But what I do damn sure know to be true is that you can build confidence, because I did it. Yes, I've always been, you know, a little confident in my life. Like I had to grow up quickly, right? And also when it came to my skin color, I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. There was not many white basketball players in Mount Vernon, New York. So like I did have a competitive edge about me that like gave me the confidence. But like when you're the only white boy in a basketball court, you think you're confident?
Yeah, work a little extra harder.
Yeah, you know, like I'm airballing just off of nerves. You know what I'm saying? And now I'm not only the white boy, but now I'm the white airball. Like that's not good, right? So like I got to get out there.
Stack.
You know what I'm saying? Like I got to get out there and gain and earn my shit.
Yeah.
So you know, I do believe confidence is something that can be built. You know, and it really does start small. But I look at people in their lives, and really what it is they don't expect anything from themselves. I think one of the worst sayings in the world is don't have expectations, right? Like, it's fine, don't have expectations of other people. That's okay, I guess. But I do have expectations of people. Like, if you're in my life, like, I do expect there to be a value exchange, right? Like, I just feel that way. And
that's
I'm sorry
based
if
upon
it feels...
that's based upon your conscience of standard.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing. Yeah,
100%. I don't believe perfection exists, but I believe excellence and a high personal standard does. So you should have high expectations of yourself. When I look at most people who are struggling in a space, they don't have an expectation of themselves. So I challenge you to find the person that you want to be, right? And don't look at somebody else to do that. Look at yourself now. See where you're currently at. Be honest with yourself. You're fat? Okay, you're fat. What are you going to do to make the changes? Don't change it overnight, but change two things overnight, right? I think a lot of people go wrong because they just dive fully into things that they can't sustain over time.
You're going back to like fad diets, fad exercise. Like, I mean, look, no offense to all the old business guys over there. Like, you know, do what you got to do, 100%. But you got to have consciousness about that.
But it's the same thing, like, you're skinny, right? Like, I was skinny. I was a skinny guy, really, really, really skinny. And I was just obsessed with getting stronger and getting bigger. And I had it stacked against me because anything I would eat, I was throwing up or coming out. Right. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it was. Yeah. But then there were other things that I could be doing. It was like, okay, I need to get my knowledge up because I need to figure out what food is going to actually help me build muscle with Crohn's disease. And it's the same formula in life. Like, you have to be very intentional about it. We've said intentional about 58 times on this podcast, right? But there's really no secret here. But it's taking the simple things, making them as less complicated as possible, and applying them. Don't get caught up in a year from now. Don't get caught up in 2 years from now, 5 years from now. I think you should have a game plan of what you want. But you over here worried about 5 years, and you can't even worry about the next 5 days.
Day two. Yeah, I got you. I agree with you.
You know, and that's usually my conversation with people who are seeking that. But I'm also not out here to teach. Like, that's not really what I'm here trying to do. I'm out here to share my experience. And if my experience can help somebody along the way, and you can take a nugget, 2 nuggets from it, and apply it to your own life, that's my job.
Right. And it's only if you want to.
100%. My mission is always to encourage and inspire anybody. Doesn't matter where you at, where you're at in your life.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care if, you know, you want to change your body physically, you want to change your relationship, this, that. I'm here to encourage anybody that comes across the path. But to be encouraged and to be inspired, you have to receive that.
I love that, man. I love that. All right, so last question here.
Yep.
The No Snooze Podcast. Tell me how that came up. What was the inception, the idea behind it, and how's it going?
Yeah. So I've been very fortunate to build this platform alongside Claudio Valenzuela, who is my audio-visual partner.
Okay.
And Mike Pirelli was my co-host for the first 150 episodes.
How many episodes do you have?
We'll be coming up on 200.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we really just record once a week, but again, it's consistent. We put it in the calendar, and every week we show up, and boom, we make it happen.
Right.
But the first thing that you see in the morning is that snooze button. And you have an opportunity to either go back to sleep on your dreams and aspirations or wake up and attack everything that you do.
Right.
Ironically, it wasn't the No Snooze Podcast at first. We were going to talk about fitness and finance, but we very quickly realized that we weren't the richest or the fittest. So
you felt like you weren't an authority.
Yeah. So like I had no credibility in my 20s. Like, you know, like my money's not real money. Like, you know.
Well, when did you start this podcast?
4.5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, I was 29 at the time. And it was a really good thing because podcasting did change my life.
Okay.
It did.
How?
I was on the treadmill one day, and instead of, this was after, you know, I had the situation with my mom, me just really in a bad situation in my marriage, trying to turn things around. And I said, you know what? Let me stop listening to rap music, because rap music, and I love rap and hip hop. I'm a product of it too. You know, and it will always be a root of mine.
Right.
But I very quickly found myself listening to the things that were going on, talking about money and alcohol, or, you know, girls and alcohol. And now I'm in the clubs with girls and drinking alcohol.
Right.
So like, you know, you have to be conscious about that. So I just remembered, like, I put on like, it was an Ed Milet, Tony Robbins podcast, and I was just walking on the treadmill. Right. And this is before podcasting became a thing.
Right.
This is like 2016, 2017 time.
Right.
And
it was right after the cassettes went out and they were going audio. Remember? I mean, this is before your time.
Well, no, yeah.
That's Tony Robbins cassettes.
Yeah,
stuff?
no. Tony Robbins is the GOAT. But like, so for me, it was, you know, they were podcasting, but it was still like, I think I think these guys started in like 2014 or 15,
Right.
you know, around that time. So this was 16 or 17, and I just threw it on, and I remember it was these two guys talking about personal and professional development, and I started to feel something, like physically in my body, like tingles and shit,
Right.
like, you know, almost like the chills, but like
Wow.
as I'm walking on the treadmill, then I'm putting the treadmill up,
Yeah, amped.
running,
Yeah.
faster. And all these dudes were just talking. They were
Right.
talking like this.
Right.
And I'm like, holy shit. So I just listened to podcasts. That was the first change that I made to become like aware of my
another
personal
version.
and professional development.
Right.
Anytime I was in the gym, I was like, I'm not listening to rap music, I'm listening to podcasts. And I'm there for an hour and a half, so like I'm going to probably consume a lot of content in the next
Right.
6 months. So I did that. Very strategic. I would pick out, because I always know what I'm going to do in the gym before I get to the gym. It's just something that I have to do, because if not,
You're a planner, bro.
I'm gonna
You're
wait,
a planner.
Yeah,
right?
I'm gonna waste time, you know, doing that. So even my podcast is picked out.
Right.
So I did that for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years. And I'm like making all these changes in my life, in my relationships. I'm going to therapy, I'm doing this shit, but it's all becoming aligned. It's no longer Dave is just being Dave in the gym, right? So I'm like, wow, like I'm actually listening to this habit stacking. I'm habit stacking my life. I went from A to B. It's tangible. I'm a very tangible person. Like if you can't show me real
Show me the
progress,
proof, right?
yeah,
Show me
like
the
if you
proof.
can't do that, I'm not a believer.
Right.
And I will challenge you, and I will continue to challenge you until you can show me like A to B.
Right.
So in my own life, I'm looking like, oh, Dave,
still connecting
Dave,
dots.
yo,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is crazy.
Yeah.
So that's how podcasting for me became of interest.
Right.
Then I started to apply it. I'm like, yo, I got to share this knowledge.
Mhm.
And I always like to talk.
Mhm.
Like I've always been a talker. I was never really great in school,
Mhm.
but I always had really good relationships, like with my teachers, because I would
Right.
go to them and be like, can you help me, please? And
Right,
like,
right.
you know,
Develop that relationship. Right.
right. So like I always love people, and people have always been a huge part of my life, just community in general. So one morning I'm coming out of my house at like 4:30 a.m. and I just look into the camera and it's Snapchat.
Mhm.
I'm like, no snooze, baby, come on, just like that. But this was now when we already launched the idea of fitness and finance.
Okay.
Everybody who was up at that time started reposting no snooze because they were up early too, and they were like, wait, I didn't snooze today either.
Right.
So then my partner at the time, Mike Pirelli, was like, yo, it needs to be no snooze. I'm like, that's a dumb name. Like, it just sounds dumb. He's like, no, it's not. It's genius.
No, shut up.
Because everybody is going to know what no snooze
means.
is.
Right.
So it's like snooze on life, never that.
Okay.
So it became something that was much bigger, and even like the logo. You know, I have it here, and the life symbol for sleep is a Z.
Oh, right.
Right?
Right.
It's
And
it's
X.
very simple. It's a Z with a line through it, and if you're on YouTube, you can see this here. But it also represents an hourglass,
Ah, the
right?
time.
And an
Yeah, I get it.
hourglass is a representation of life. You turn it over, and you have one opportunity to go through.
Right.
Right? You get one time through this life. So it's something that became like it was a lifestyle.
Mhm.
It's not just a passion project. It's a way that I live my life. I do
Right.
not snooze on my life. Me as a parent, I don't snooze. Me in business, I don't snooze. Me in the gym, I don't snooze. Me in my relationships, I don't snooze. Anything I do, I get up and I attack it. So that's how the podcast came about. We have merch with that logo on it as well. And it's created a really, really big platform. Like Ace, my men's, stuff would not exist without
About no snooze.
No Snooze.
Yeah.
And the connections that were formed and the conversations that were formed on this podcast, just like this,
Yeah.
they're real, genuine conversations.
Yeah.
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 It wasn't podcasting is hard, man.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until episode 150 to where Yahoo, or 155, Yahoo ended up covering a story on
Really.
on the former VP of the UFC, like I told you,
Right.
Dialingo. So that was the first media story that dropped. And I
They
just,
were on your podcast?
yeah,
Okay,
she
cool.
was. Yeah,
Cool,
yeah.
cool.
And I just got a call from a media guy. He's like, "Oh, I heard you did something with Diamandia. Like, I want to write a story."
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
So writes the story, and literally that was just in October.
Really.
But I've been podcasting for 4 years before that. I'm like, where were you at, bro? Like,
Yeah.
I've been talking
Wow.
about this same stuff.
Every overnight success has taken at least a decade.
You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, this is crazy. And, people look at the platform and they're like, oh, yeah, you have a decent amount of followers here and there. But one thing I pride myself is the engagement.
Yeah.
The engagement's really, really
I think
good.
that's more important than
Yeah.
followers. Yeah.
And people now, it's to the point that if we don't drop an episode on a Monday morning,
Is an issue?
it's like I have 12, 15 people reaching out like,
Yo,
yo man, I'm
you
in the
good?
gym. I ain't got no content.
Yeah, you good? Yeah.
And it could be just one person, right? And every episode, you depending on the way my platform is now, I get like 1,500 to 2,500 downloads on an audio, and then the YouTube aside is another couple thousand, whatever.
Right.
Sometimes it's a couple hundred. You know how it fluctuates.
Yeah.
But there's some that hit this algorithm and they're doing 10,000 on Spotify.
Wow.
So it's all about like the guests that you're bringing on, the conversations that are happening. It's a great platform, man, and I love podcasting. But really, what it comes down to is podcasting changed my life.
That's dope.
And
man.
I wanted to share it.
So No Snooze has created opportunities and open. What do you mean by that? So I'll give you an example. Whenever I get clients all the time through Instagram, right? And it's because of they're familiar with me because of all the content, right? They trust me. I look like them, maybe. I talk like them. There's something that has that the common tether. That's the word I want to use, right? No Snooze, basically guys or girls or people that just want to not take it for granted is what I'm getting, right? And they want to seize every opportunity they can.
Correct.
And is that what you see in your community? Because I want to open that up, because going back to like-mindedness, going back to alignment, going back to like, this is all what it comes. This is exactly what we were talking about, and I'm trying to put it. I'm just using your podcast as the vessel to explain to people how being in the right rooms, being around the right people, can kind of change your habits.
Yes, absolutely. No, I'm very grateful for the audience, man, and I've had an opportunity over the course of the past 4.5 years to connect with a lot of these people, like you're saying, on Instagram. And really, anybody that DMs me, I make sure that I get back.
Yeah.
Regardless of like, if it takes me a little bit, it takes me a little bit. But like, I'm on there. I don't have like anybody that's
no bots.
Doing that. That's doing. I don't even have a VA. Like a lot of people think like even my clips and stuff that I can easily pay somebody $200-$300 a month overseas to do it.
Right.
I do it.
Because you do your own clips.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I don't make anything crazy. It's me with background music and a guest, and we go back and forth, chop it up, boom, put it on Instagram. I think a lot of people get caught up with the content nowadays. Like, people do like simple stuff. And yes, of course, there's a way to deliver a message. But like, my message is very clear. It's exactly what you're saying. It's just don't snooze on your life. So if you want more for yourself, more as a parent, more as an individual, a wife, a husband, more as a business owner that you're in. You're right, an entrepreneur. This podcast is for you. Right. And we've created a platform to where I have people from all over the country and the world. So it's been streamed in over 75 countries now.
That's great.
That people reach out and they're like, yo, man, like I did an episode on, when I put my dog to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
I had this lady reach out from, I don't even know what country. I think it was Turks and Caicos.
Really?
Yeah, like great country. I'm like, I want a vacation there.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I
want
mean?
to hang out there.
Yeah. And she's just like, I just want to let you know the impact that episode had on me. And like, I don't even know if she's interested in personal professional development.
Yeah.
But like, people come across podcasting and they like to hear what it is that you have to say. Right. And I think the one thing that I do well is I'm very authentic when it comes to what I have to say.
Right.
I don't really have a problem with like before. I didn't understand your question.
Right. And you asked me.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I just don't understand your question.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem in conversation, right? Whether it's a little bit contentious or it's like us going back and forth. You can disagree with people all day long, and this is even in my relationship, right? Like, I can disagree, doesn't mean that I have to disrespect. Whereas before, I had to disrespect.
Right.
And I didn't know how to.
And that, my man, we're talking about right now is maturity. That's all that is.
Oh,
and I'm not calling you immature, but understand, like, you have to have a level of self-awareness to understand that.
Right.
We can respect, like, I use this is like almost like a canned line when I'm talking to someone. I respectfully disagree. Like, you'll hear me say that. Like, no, I'm not shitting on you. I just don't agree.
Right.
And nothing you're going to say is going to change my mind.
Right.
It's all good. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, yeah, but that takes a level of maturity. And I will say self-awareness, I don't want to use the word education as if you have to go to school, but education as if you have to understand enough about the other person's perspective, where they're coming from, to maybe at least appreciate it. Whether you agree with it or not, you can see it. I get it. Like, all right, I understand. You know what I mean? Like, that. I think that's what we're lacking. I think that's what we're lacking. I think you're doing a great job. It was one of the reasons I have you on Real with Omar. I had you as a guest, and on that, I think we should wrap. But please let people know where they can reach you. Look into the camera. Tell
Yes.
them who you are. What you got.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you to you, man.
Nah, man, absolutely.
No, I appreciate this platform. I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah.
I got to get you on No Snooze. So
Absolutely,
as soon as we're done with this one, we'll talk about
Yeah, but
getting
listen,
you on that to tell that
and
story.
and just so everybody, this was when was the text?
I don't know, a week ago.
Yeah, it was like Monday or Tuesday. So I'm gonna give you some background. We're gonna keep going. I'm gonna give you some background. So I was going through a lot of personal shit for the last 6-7 months of my life, right? I don't want to go into that right now, but just going through some shit. And finally, it culminated into what it culminated, and there was finality to it. And I was talking to my wife, and my wife is my strongest critic. I love her for that and all that. And she's like, yo, you haven't been podcasting. Oh, you haven't like all your stuff is like. So like full transparency, I haven't been really cutting real content for like 6-7 months. I've just been using scraping, those terms so people know, like use your old shit, because my headspace wasn't there. So then I was like, so on that Monday, I got told by my wife, and then I was talking to my marketing people, and they were like, oh man, we're really scraping, man. Like I'm just letting you know, like we keep doing it, but you know what I'm saying? So I was like, you know what, fuck that. So boom, that Monday I was like, contact 5, and going back to, I'm using this because this is a really good example. I made a list for myself. I have to contact 5 people. I need 2 guests for next week.
Yep.
That was just an arbitrary target I set for myself. You were one of the people. 5 other people, 3 other people responded, but you responded the fastest. And just so people know, to see how it works, I don't really know Dave from anything but maybe a couple of common friends. I hit you on a DM. I say, hey man, this is what I'm looking to do. Let me know if you're interested. You hit me back, and 2 grown-ass men made an appointment, and we made it.
Yep.
And it's that simple. But it only works with people that move with purpose, right? There's still, like, you said something to me off camera before. You're like, too much with the, let's meet up. Like, yo, we can meet up right here. Like, we can make it happen right here. Like, what else are we gonna meet up about? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we can talk later, but yeah. And I think I want to pay homage to that, to you for executing. I'm an executor, and I appreciate that shit, because there's so many people that are not like that, and then they always find the reason. No, yo, bro, look, I mean, my mother died 2 weeks ago. Here we are. Like I could pull up any excuse you have. I'll pull one up. I could pull up maybe bigger. It's not about that. It's about, yo, get it done. Just get it done. At the end of the day, get it done, and that's what I'm about. That's what I feel like you're about. I'm glad you're on. Thank you so much. And no snooze, man. Like, don't sleep on your life, because you only get one, and tomorrow's not promised, man.
That's right. You know that better than anybody. And kudos to you, man, for what you're dealing with now with mom. I know that's not easy.
Yeah, I'm good with it. I mean, I'm really good with it. I took a whole week. I mean, for other people, that's like, oh, that's too little. I'm talking about I shut down for a week. I cried every day for a week. I accepted it. I process it. I'm processing it, and she's in a better place. And that's all it is. That's all it is. That's all. It's really, me speaking about it right now is just, it's what it is, man. Like, like going back to what I always say, looking in the mirror, I had to be really honest. I was like, yo, man, if I was in that position and the way I was kind of degrading, would I want to be here? Like, and all that shit kind of made sense to me. I was like, nah, man, I would have, Then of course you run to your kids, and your kids are young still. My kids are old. I'm like, yo, this ever happens to me, you pull the fucking plug. And they're like, Dad, you crazy? Like, becomes that, but it gives you clarity. It gives you clarity, because going back to, I've always lived my life this way, but just these experiences I go through just further validate that I'm on the right path of thinking, because, like you said, run to the street, get hit by a car, it's a wrap. It's done. Game's over. And you could be left with a lot of regret. I'd rather I'll leave it on the court, and then we'll see what happens, right? Yeah. I'm sorry, but I cut you off.
All good.
We went somewhere else.
No, that's all good, man. And that's the beauty of podcasting. It's your show. You do what you want.
And it's the edit.
But it's okay. It's all right. Yeah. And shout out to Jason Lacayo too, man, because
Jumpman Jay.
Yeah, great dude. But I always make my own decisions when it comes to people reaching out to me and how I am going to move forward with that relationship. So I had enough intel on you just from your Instagram, the way you put yourself out there, and the authenticity behind the message that you put forth. So I committed to you anyway. Then after I committed, I went to Jay, and I was like, yo, I think you guys have had a conversation. And he said you were a great dude too, man.
Yeah, that's my guy.
Just want to shout out Jason.
Shout out to
yeah.
Jason because I was his inspiration to take his podcasting to the next level. That's on his. That's
Yep.
on the interview of me with him. I didn't know that. He said that. I was like, really? He was like, yeah. Because when I first brought him on, he was like, yeah. I was like, look, listen, man. You figure people are going to be looking at you, and this is forever.
Right.
So put your best foot forward.
Yep,
And then he's
very
like,
cool.
I took that I went hard. I was like, and I love it, and I
Yep.
love it. And I was like, I'm as much as I am the athlete and the activist, I'm also a great spectator. Like I give shout out to all my boys. You doing your thing, Jay. I like that. I want to be associated with that. I'm not that guy like, oh, my podcast. Yo, man, there's enough sunshine for everybody. I say that all the time.
Yep,
I was like, yo, man,
absolutely.
there's this beautiful world. All of us in our own little kingdoms can come together and create something grand, right? And that's what it's about. That's what it's about.
Yeah, so everybody can connect with me. The best place to find me is on Instagram. My personal page is at Dave Reg, Dave, and then REGG, no underscores or anything like that. Or you can find my podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your audio feeds, on YouTube as well. And that's on Instagram at No Snooze Podcast. Best place to connect with me. I'm always down to collaborate. And again, man, I appreciate you for bringing me on.
David Reggina, thank you for your time, brother.
Yes,
Thank you for your
thank
time. All right.